Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VEASAN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos, as always. And Michael, we haven't spoken since Monday night, or Monday morning, I should say. How about them Cowboys, buddy? First playoff victory in 30 years?
We're ready to playing go. Possum. Listen to you. Now you're sticking your chest out. You were playing possum. I'm nervous. I don't worry about it. Now all of a sudden, like a true Cowboy fan, you're ready to be the, how about them Cowboys?
We're out of the shadows, buddy.
I love it. I mean, look, I didn't understand the line. I really didn't.
I didn't either.
I know they were 3.5-point favorites, but everybody made too much about the Washington game and not enough about the season. And everybody made a lot about Brady turning on the engine, when in reality there was the team was broken the entire year. I mean, go back to Cleveland when they got a 17-10 lead in the second quarter and they can't score another point to win that game and to cover. I mean, so I think people got duped into thinking there was just going to be this engine light go on for Tampa when it was never going to happen. And look. How about that for the ugliest under you could ever imagine? Can you imagine if you took the under? Like every week on Sirius Radio, on Mad Dog Radio, I do a hit with Chris Russo from 5 to 5:30. And we do the betting stuff. And then we get into the playoffs. We pick 6 things, and they're worth 60 to 10 points, from 60, 50, 40, 20, 30, 20, down to 10. And so whatever your best pick is, you get 60. And good. So I think his third is the least pick that I think it might have been the 20-pointer. He took the Dallas Tampa under.
Wow.
Okay. And he hits it because our man misses 4 extra points.
Just unbelievable.
It was 48.5. It comes in at 48.
That's just it's unreal. 4 missed extra points. First kicker in league history, I think, dating back to like the 1930s, to miss 4 extra points in a single game. But luckily for Dallas, it didn't cost them. I was getting nervous. I was like, hey, is this going to come back and bite them in the you-know-what? But they were able to get the 31-14 victory there.
How about the reaction at Jerry's booth every time he missed a point? They were celebrating for the touchdown, and then all of a sudden they just went, it was Billy Joel, sadness or euphoria. I mean, it was euphoria, then they went to sadness. I mean, it was like unbelievable. Everybody's high-fiving everybody. It was great.
Yeah, Michael Irvin, the playmaker, was in there hugging people, and then you saw a shot of
he was good. He was just happy because he was going to be able to say something to your man Stephen A. Because Stephen A., I mean, I don't watch that show, but I'm on Instagram, and when he puts his cowboy hat on and he kind of goes after the Cowboys, I mean, I think that's really good shit. I really do. I think it's funny in that.
It is good stuff. Yeah, the shot that was hilarious to me was Will McClay, who's one of the higher ups there in the Cowboys front office. He had his hands up with the number 4. I'm sure he was talking about, wow, he just missed 4 extra points. It wasn't funny in the moment, but I guess looking back on it, it is a little bit funny. Hopefully he's gotten that all sorted out. But the organization says they're going to stick with Brett Maher, but they did bring in Tristan Vizcaino on the practice squad as, quote, insurance. So we'll see what that is.
I wonder, and we'll talk about this game later. We'll break it down. But I think, to me, if I were Mike McCarthy, I might carry 2 kickers into the game. Because
wow, really?
I'm because what happens if he misses the first one? You putting him back out there again? You're gonna play. You're gonna play 4 quarters with him.
I don't
think you can. I mean, so I mean, I think I might. I mean, to me. My belief would be to change kickers, although I know what they said. He's got, he's been so good all year. Get that. But I don't want to go through the whole game with the uncertainty, especially in a game where I know I need to make 3 points. I'm going to, like every drive against the 49ers, I can't let slip away because of a turnover, which is a missed field goal. So. Yeah. I think this is a really tough one. Now, I think I'll obviously practice. Like, I don't understand how, this is why it drives me crazy with television. Like, this guy can't make a kick. Why didn't we have a camera at halftime watching him warm up in the second half? Maybe he didn't do it, and I'm wrong there. Okay, but I would think at most kickers at the end of the first half, they go back out and kick again.
Yep. Yeah, it's really weird that we didn't get that because it was the biggest storyline. in a game that
it was the only storyline.
Yeah, because it was a domination by Dallas. So it's like, hey, can this guy make field goals? And it was almost like America was rooting for him on that last one to finally make the extra point. But yeah, I hopefully he got it out of his system. On the air when I was watching, I was like, man, does Brett Maher have the yips? But they're gonna stick with them. CeeDee Lamb had some encouraging words to say to tell him on the mic'd up sound stuff that the Dallas Cowboys team put out there. They always cut up a little bit of video, and he had some encouraging words for him. Dalton Schultz after the game in the locker room said, "We got your back, Brett." So the guys are saying the right stuff. We just hope that he can find that inner confidence. We'll talk more about the Cowboys, though, like Michael said, later on in this podcast as we preview the divisional weekend, my favorite football weekend of the year. But the ramifications from that game have been felt this morning, Michael, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, moments ago, this was just tweeted from Rick Stroud, who covers the Bucs, longtime beat writer down there in the Tampa area, works for the Tampa Bay Times, tweeted that the Bucs have fired offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich. The tweet says the team is making sweeping changes to their coaching staff following an 8-9 regular season and wild card loss to Dallas. As many as 5 offensive assistants and 2 on defense are expected to be let go. Your reaction to Leftwich out as the OC?
Well, I think Byron made a huge mistake. I mean, look, he had the Jacksonville job, and they offered him the job, and he turned it down because he didn't want to work with Trent Baalke. And now he's not going to get another chance again. And so you've got to, when you're hot, you got to take your moment, because I think what this tells you is how perception rules the NFL. Last year, Leftwich was perceived as a great coach. This year, he's not perceived as a great coach, right? So when you have a chance to get elected, you better take the election. You better go cash in on the election, because this league is not about selection. This league is not about, I'm going to hire the best guy. This is about the election. And Leftwich is, unfortunately, is going to pay a horrible price. I mean, look, there's no design in the run game. There was no continuity on offense. There was never a rhythm on offense. And, Brady, you could say, is done. Okay. I didn't see a lack of arm strength in Brady. I didn't see a lack of toughness in Brady. I saw a lack of coordination of the offense. And I think left alone, Leftwich proved that the job might have been too big for him. So when you have a chance to be elected and you don't turn it, and you turn it down because you don't like the guy who's the general manager and you want to bring in your own general manager, I think you extend yourself a little too far. I mean, Baalke, whatever you think of Baalke, he's done a good job of bringing players in there.
Yeah.
And Peterson, who won a Super Bowl, didn't have a problem with Baalke. So he came in. He took the job. I mean, it's a little self-indulgent, right? Yeah. So, I mean, Byron's going to have to go be a quarterback coach somewhere. No one's going to give him an offensive coordinator job. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because as a minority, he had a chance to become a head coach last year, and he didn't think the situation was right. Meanwhile, Peterson got the same deal. He didn't get any better deal. They got to work. You got to work together with the guy. And frankly, when you're in those situations, I'm not sure you could do that. He shouldn't have turned that job down. Now his offense looks horrendous, and he'll probably never have another opportunity like that again, because unless he's going to be in an elected position where he's really featured, it ain't going to happen.
You hope that he can go back to the drawing board and correct the mistakes that he had as an offensive coordinator. And was it all on him? Probably not, but you could tell that the offense just never was really in sync from week 1 all the way through the end of the regular season and into the playoffs for this team. And it goes back to where we were sitting in March when we first started this podcast. I believe our very first episode together, Michael, was when Bruce Arians decided to step down, and then they named Todd Bowles not the interim head coach, but the permanent head coach, and Leftwich becoming the OC. And a lot of the discussion during that podcast and a lot of the discussion about the Buccaneers was that Arians was the one that was kind of meddling with the offense, and everybody said that Brady and Leftwich were on the same page, and those guys would work throughout the week, and then Arians then would come in later on and say, hey, let's do things this way, this way, this way. I feel like we're learning that narrative was probably misguided, I think, just based on what we saw from that offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, there was no details ever handled. The line was a disaster. The line didn't play well from the beginning of the season to the end. And so, the line coach, and there was injuries involved. There was no creativity in the run game, and so therefore the problems mounted themselves. There was no adjustments. I love what Peyton Manning said on Monday, that these halftime adjustments are a joke, right?
Yeah, I did
He's
see
right.
that, yeah.
I mean, there are never halftime adjustments. There are in between series adjustments. So why are they looking at those Polaroids? They're looking at the Polaroids. They're over there. You can see it. The coaches are making marks on because they're going to adjust from series to series, not from half to half. Now if there's something that they can't fix, the line coach might go in there and say, okay, but they're doing that series to series. And the good coaches and the good teams in the divisional round, they'll have a different style in the second half, that they've prepared themselves to execute, not I'm going to adjust the game plan out.
Does it surprise you that Bowles is safe after this first year with Tampa Bay as the head coach?
Look, I mean, he got this whole staff dumped on him, right? So it's kind of unfair to him. It's like okay, you've saddled me with this. I can't change the offensive staff, the quarterback. I mean, for Todd, one of the biggest problems at the Jets was his inability to get the offense fixed. He hired Johnny Morton, then the front office there, Heimendinger and Mike McKagan, they wanted to fire Morton. Then they brought Jeremy Bates in, and that didn't work. So there was a bunch of changes there. So Todd's going to have to get this figured out. It's going to be a challenge for him. He's going to have to get this figured out. And then defensively, I mean, I think you owe it to him to at least see if he can run a program with his coaches or the coaches that he feels like can help him the most. But as we know in the NFL, if you don't have a good staff, as good as Belichick is, if you don't have the right guys doing the right jobs, it's not going to work.
Might be a complete restructuring of that offensive staff, reconstruction of the quarterback position. Tom Brady, I know a lot of people are wondering what his future is going to be. We'll have a lot of time to talk about that, but kind of your early thoughts before we move on to the next.
I mean, look, I don't think firing Leftwich was okay. Brady wants him fired and he'll come back. I don't think Brady's ever going back to Tampa. I'll just say that. I would say 99% sure he's not going back to Tampa. In the NFL, there's nothing 100% certain. But that being said, I don't think that's going to be in play for him. I think he'll move on. I don't think the Leftwich thing had anything to do with it. I think what I've said and I have maintained for a long time, I wrote a column about this when I was still writing for The Athletic, that Brady is institutionalized like I am. We are truly like Brooks from Shawshank. We've been trained one way. We've been trained in a system that we're really comfortable in. And in that system, we feel the best and we feel confident. And we will execute, and our talents shine the most. I'm a much better personnel guy in that system than I am not. But Brady's a much better quarterback when he's within that system and how they prepare than he's not. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Brady by no means. I'm just saying that we're institutionalized within the system.
I got
right?
You. I got you.
And so I think Brady has learned, like I learned through my career, that you think everybody does it. It's like people say all the time, more basketball coaches throughout the country or baseball coaches, they read Gridiron Genius. Very few football people read Gridiron Genius because they feel like, we already do that. That's the perception. Like, I don't need to learn from Bella. I already do that. I already done. Like, that's not going to help me at all. When in reality, nobody does it. I was talking to a coach who worked for a lot of different staffs and worked, and had been around the Patriot way. And he said, I thought everybody did what they did. But until I was there, until I saw it, like, that's not even close. It's different. Now, doesn't mean they're going to be successful. I'm just saying the methodology and their process is completely different.
Well, that people are going to take these comments that you're saying about Brady being comfortable in the system that he was institutionalized in, is that there might be a vacant QB position here where I'm sitting in Las Vegas, Michael.
I think certainly it's easy for people to 1 and 1 equals 2, but I think it's going to be a little deeper than that. I think it's going to be comfortability. It's going to be I think that there's levels with Brady, right? So if the Raiders sign Brady, it's a year, and then what do we do in the next year? San Francisco signs Brady, it's for the year, and we got Brock Purdy, and we'll figure out what we're going to do with Trey Lance, right? So we got that. If Miami signs Brady, what are we doing? We got Tua, it's all different circumstances. But I will say Brady will go somewhere where he feels the process is the right process for him. So if Sean Payton were to get a job, I would feel like Brady, even though it's not a New England process, I would feel like he would be prepared to play at his highest level.
All very interesting stuff. Brady going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. I cannot wait to see how this thing unfolds. Let's continue on here, Michael, with your boy, Brandon Staley. I mean, he fires the offensive coordinator. I'm giving him to you.
There's going to be a fucking 30 for 30 on how this asshole kept his job. Like, seriously.
He fired the OC.
We got to do a 30 for, and then he comes out and he's as arrogant as could be. Look. I'm not related to Joe Lombardi, but I like Joe Lombardi. I love the family. They mean the world to me. And Joe is a really good coach who was put in a position that, he runs that offense. And when you don't have the tools around him to run that offense, like I've been saying, like, to me, I'm not absolving anything that goes on, but when you blame the design on the production, right? So there's two elements, right? There's design and production, right? So let's take New England. New England, the design was bad and the production was bad. That offensively I'm talking about. Let's go to New Orleans. Let's go to the Chargers. The design was wrong. The production was good. So they produced a lot of good numbers offensively. The design of not having a power running game was wrong. Mm-hmm. And that falls on the people who are partly responsible for the design. So you could fire Lombardi. That's fine. They'll change jobs. Everybody will move over, But you as the head coach, you're so brilliant, you never got control of the game because you never had a power run game. You never had the ability to slow the game down. You never improved your run game. You can blame Lombardi for that, but you kept trying to play with Eckler as opposed to going out and signing what we talked about last week. Why not sign Murray? He was on a practice squad. You would have put Murray on that team. Now they got a power back. And now Eckler becomes a better player. So for me, it's like, okay. And this guy continues. He acts like we're going to take it up another level offensively. How about if you take it up another level defensively?
How about that, huh? He wins these press conferences. I got to give it to him, though, man. He really.
How does he win them? He lies his whole way through them.
That's what I'm saying. That's how he's the politician up there. He's well spoken. He has a nice demeanor about him. He's somebody that's like, oh, that seems like a nice guy. I'd want to go out to lunch with him. Talk a little bit of ball. And that's how he builds this narrative of, Staley's the genius, the defensive guru, and all that stuff. Like he truly wins at the podium. I think that's why he doesn't get under fire that much. Well, I guess now this past couple of weeks he's been under fire. He doesn't get under fire because the people that love that he goes for it on fourth down can't see the forest for the trees. Well, they hate him.
They don't see. Oh yeah, now they hate him, right? Because he's not going for it because he turned on them, right?
He turned on them, yeah.
Here he is. The Chargers. What the Chargers? They couldn't run the ball, but they couldn't stop the run all year. Like he's the 32nd ranked yards per attempt defense in the league. They're 28th in yards allowed. This guy, and he fires this guy, and he fires his. How about accountability? Mm-hmm. How about saying, okay, I'm accountable? When you sit there, well, we just didn't do a good enough job in the second half. No, how about accountability? Look, here's the reason he does. There'll be a 30 for 30 for this on ESPN. Here's my take on why he didn't get fired. I think he didn't get fired because the Spanos family, A, counts their nickels. B, it's going to take $8 million to send him on his way. And then the new coach, the price of the new coaches now has significantly risen. If you want to get into a decent ballpark on these coaches, it's the head coach now, instead of being at $4 million or $5 million, it may be up to $8 million. So if you hire a new guy and you give him $8 million, over a 5-year deal, now you're talking about way more money. And now look at all the money you've added to your bottom line. Whereas Staley is a cheap commodity. Here's the question though: who does Staley hire as his offensive coordinator? Say, if he hires anybody who's got substance and a demeanor and experience, that guy's going to be the next head coach of the Chargers. Staley can't let that happen. Staley's too insecure. As much as he has this false bravado out there, he's way too insecure to bring somebody in who's smarter than him. Because remember, this is the guy with 120 IQ that thinks he's got 170 IQ, like we talked about last week. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have to bring in somebody that he thinks he can control because he doesn't want to give the Spanos family the chance to fire him and hire this person. It's now he's in preservation of his desk, right? Now he wants to preserve his desk. That's what he's thinking. He's not thinking about going out and getting the brightest young mind. He's thinking about, how do I preserve my desk?
It's CYA, cover your ass. That's what it's become now. And that's a job that I feel like would be really coveted among offensive minds in football because of the quarterback that you get to work with. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But if Staley's in kind of job preservation mode, maybe he ends up making a worse hire.
Well, I mean,
to try to keep his job.
Well, first of all, he can't call Detroit and hire Ben Johnson.
No.
Right? So he's got to be out there at the pool of who's available to him. Or does he know a young quarterback coach that he thinks could be a great play caller? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really his options. The names in Washington that Ron Rivera are interviewing you can't get I don't even know how he put together his list. I mean, Pat Shurmur. I mean, did he watch Denver at all? Ken Zampese, has he ever watched him be a coordinator before? Seriously, are you watching these guys? Who are you going to hire? Who's out there that you're going to get that's going to be better than Lombardi was? Or how about if you made Lombardi, if you designed it better and then went into Lombardi and said, here's what we got to do. Here's how we have to change. Can you do that?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up Ben Johnson because the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator was a hot name in this coaching cycle because of what Detroit was able to do offensively, and not just in the second half of the season. They were always putting up points even when they were losing games in the first half of the season as well. And he decided to take his name out of the head coaching search and has re-upped with the Detroit Lions to be their offensive coordinator, saying that, hey, he's confident and has faith that they're building something special in the Motor City. And with the 5 head coaching vacancies that we do have, I'm curious because a lot of these don't look super attractive on the surface. Now, maybe it is, and there's only 32 head coaching jobs, so somebody's going to take these jobs, of course. But with the Panthers, Broncos, Colts, Texans, and Cardinals, it doesn't feel like we have as great a head coaching jobs as we typically have. What do you make of this head coaching cycle that we've seen, and do we not have enough candidates, or do we not have enough quality jobs?
Well, I think there's the lack of quality of the job, right? I think there's a sense that next year is going to be a bonanza, right? Next year could be the bonanza. I mean, obviously, if Staley doesn't win next year, that job opens up, and I think there'll be more of the same. I mean, there'll be more jobs. What about Washington if they get a new owner? That could be a bonanza job, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of these things that could happen. Or, if you have the first pick of the draft a year from now, do you get Caleb Williams from USC, and he's better than any of these guys in this draft? You know what I mean? There's kind of that thinking. And if you're Ben Johnson, look, why take a job? If he goes to Carolina, and he gets offered whatever he gets offered, is he better off staying in? Is he better off staying in Detroit and getting a huge raise, which I'm sure he did, which is, to me, it's common sense for Detroit to give him a huge raise to keep him as opposed to take the right job. I think if you're Ben Johnson, you got to take the right job. And, if you feel like you're going to continue to go back, whereas Leftwich, he was with Arians, and so now he's on his own. I think that he took a risk and he lost the election. He should have taken it. Mm-hmm. So I do think the next year market is going to be, and I think that's going to entice Sean Payton too. I mean, does he wait around another year?
That's kind of what I think is happening. Payton, he's going on these interviews, and he's done a number of them. I know he's done an interview with Houston, Carolina, Denver. It wouldn't shock me if he goes back to Fox and sits on the sidelines one more year. Seems like he's having fun doing TV. He's doing all sorts of hits on Cowherd Show. He's on the Fox pregame show on Sunday mornings and all that. But of the 5 head coaching vacancies that we do have, which one do you think has the most stable ownership group?
I think it's Denver. I mean, I've asked people who've been through the Denver. I think it's Denver, and I think it's I think it's because of the owner. I think he understands what needs to happen to have sustainable success. I'm not sure that some of these other. I mean, Michael Bidwell at Monty Osdorf took the GM job there. I mean, that's always kind of been in place. I mean, we'll see what happens in Carolina, how that works out. But I would say right now, Denver. because I think they know they have a realistic understanding of where they are.
It's funny you say Denver because I feel like that's the job that a lot of people rank the last just because of the quarterback that you're attached to and that the price tag that the quarterback currently has. But ownership, and you heard even Sean Payton say it, ownership is the number one thing that he's looking for. It's not a quarterback. Obviously, everybody's looking for quarterback, but all these quarterback situations are uncertain. Otherwise, these jobs wouldn't be available. It's kind of where the deal is at. Right. But ownership is like his chief kind of concern and priority when he's aligning himself with an organization. But it is very fascinating that Denver is the top of that list, Michael. Let's take our first break, and we'll talk about the 2 GM vacancies that were filled in Arizona and Tennessee when we come back here on the GM Shuffle. All right, we saw a couple of franchises select their GMs this week here. The Tennessee Titans hiring the 49ers Director of Player Personnel, Ran Carthon, as their new general manager. And then we saw the Arizona Cardinals go ahead and take Titans executive Monty Ossenfort as their new GM. And let's start with the Arizona one, because I think that's the situation where it's a little more volatile because of the quarterback injury that Kyler Murray suffered there with the knee injury. It doesn't look like he's going to be playing in 2023. But if you were to talk to Monty Ossenfort or just kind of look at what his tasks are, what do you think is the first thing that he needs to accomplish now that he's taken over that job, which was previously held by Steve Keim?
I think he needs to be in perfect harmony with the head coach. I think they have to be completely aligned philosophically and from a structure and of an understanding of how what Monty said at that press conference about what he's looking for in players. To me, he has to find a coach not only who says those things, but wants those things. I mean, to me, if I'm Monty, I think the guy he's got to hire is Brian Flores. I think he's got to hire Brian Flores. And let's build this thing together because they're both from that system. They both know the grading system that Monty – I mean, I'm sure they probably don't even have a grading system in Arizona. I mean, if they do, it's probably very basic. So I'm sure he's going to he's bringing a grading system. But I think alignment with the coach is the only chance Monty has to be successful because there's still going to be some outside fashion. I mean, the owner even admitted that Steve Keim might still be lingering around in the building.
Yeah, which is very weird.
Which and we know the owner and Steve Keim are best friends, so that's not a good thing. And so you're going to have to gain alignment. I mean, one of the reasons I think we won in Oakland when we were winning in Oakland and Gruden was there was alignment in terms of all of us wanting to get, like when we wanted to sign Rod Woodson, Al didn't want to sign him because it was going to affect Anthony Dorsett when we were all aligned to do that. When we wanted to sign Jerry Rice, Al didn't want to do that because it was going to affect James Jett, but we were all aligned to do it. When things happened at the Raiders that weren't connected properly, the alignment was Al he had certain people that wanted to do with him, and then other people, so there wasn't that alignment. When there was uniformity on one side of the hall against now, I'm not saying Al didn't want to do it, because obviously we did it. Those players showed up. They wouldn't have showed up there if he didn't want to do it. But the reality of it is I think that alignment that we created on our side allowed us to be able to defeat the enemy from within at times. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Monty's got to avoid.
I think that's a really good way to kind of frame it there, is that when you have everybody pushing towards something, it's a little bit easier to convince the head chief decision maker when everybody's aligned in that instance there with the Raiders and the example that you brought up. How about in Tennessee, though? Ran Carthon coming over from San Francisco, now taking over. He has a head coach in place, one of the best head coaches in the National Football League in Mike Vrabel. But the quarterback situation is interesting. Ryan Tannehill, the Titans could move on from him without much of a dead cap penalty this offseason. And it feels like it's a roster that's a little bit in transition going from old to young here. What advice and what kind of task do you think Ran Carthon has as he steps into that role?
He's got one job. He's got to fix the quarterback. He's got one job. He's got to fix the quarterback. He's got to be honest about Willis, because, he can't hang on to that prayer. He can't Bon Jovi that one. He can't live on a prayer on that one. So he's got to move, he's got to figure that one out. And then he's got to decide on how he's going to proceed moving forward, because everything else is secondary. I mean, yeah, you got to get better players, but that's why you're there. You wouldn't have had that job if they're a talented team. I mean, the owner was obsessed with San Francisco's depth that they had, and I'm not saying Ran Carthon's not responsible for some of that depth, but if you understand what actually happens in San Francisco, San Francisco and New England are the two teams that are run pretty much. One guy does all the decision making, and when he was having a bad one, and that's when the Trey Lance thing kind of go through. I think now that he's back kind of more of himself, I think you'll see that. So a lot of the decisions that were made there are made from his chair, and Rand's going to have to prove he can go out there and get those players, but he's got a hell of a coach, and he's in a great job because the one thing about the coach he has, he'll develop the talent, which is all you need. He's got to fix the quarterback. Now, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You think he goes after Trey Lance?
Ooh. Somebody in that building convinced them to take Trey Lance. I don't know if it's John Lynch or if it's Adam Peters.
I could tell you it was Lynch and Adam Peters. It was those two guys.
Those two guys? Okay.
Yeah, those two guys. I mean, that's what I've been told reliably, that they fell in love with them. And they thought so we understand this. The whole idea behind Lance was to elevate Kyle's offense, which people felt like was getting stale.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's stale? Did it look stale last week? That was the whole conversation.
I hope it's stale on Sunday.
Yeah. I'm sure you do.
It doesn't look stale, to answer your question. It looks pretty damn good with what they've been able to do on offense. But Lance, we still don't know. I feel like we don't have a solid evaluation about what he is as a quarterback, which is, I thought, was the biggest,
I don't know how you can say that. How can you say that? We watched Brock Purdy. We saw him play in the first game of the year.
Yeah, that's what
we saw him play in the preseason.
We have 3 games of Trey Lance.
We had one game with Brock Purdy, and it was pretty clear. Like, how could you say that? Brock Purdy's a rookie. We watched 2 rookies. One the last pick in the draft, one the third pick in the draft. The last pick in the draft looks like he's ready to play. The third pick in the draft looks like he has no chance to play.
Well, this is where I go back to where Brock Purdy was in college, and he started how many games? 40-plus games at Iowa State? Lance, he missed the whole season because of COVID, only played 1 game in that year. So you got to go all the way back to, I think, like 2019 when he was regularly playing football. I think these guys are going to come along at different paces just because Lance simply hasn't played.
Yeah. You keep making excuses.
Keep doing it. I'm not making excuses.
Just keep making excuses. One guy comes in and plays well. The other guy can't even make a throw. And you got a bucket full. You got Batman's utility. I got another excuse over here. Here it comes. I got one here. But here comes another one. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I'm just saying, you might be right. Lance might be bad. You might be wrong. He might be
bad.
good.
I mean, look at him.
I don't think we can have a fair assessment of what he is because he's played 3 NFL games.
Yeah, we can. Why do you think they signed Garoppolo?
For insurance.
No, because they have flight back to Houston after they played a preseason game. Where they tried to play the game to get ready to play the Bears on the opening day, and it was an abomination.
So why do you think he was their week 1 starter?
I said it on the pod. I said, I promise you, Kyle Shanahan saying on this airplane flying home, get me Jimmy Garoppolo. I said it on the pod that weekend. We go back and Elliott can cut it out. Like, it was obvious. There was no way.
So why do you think he
keep making excuses? Just keep making them.
Well, Shanahan's the same head coach that made Trey Lance their week 1 starter against Chicago. What was the?
I think he had no choice, right? I mean, doesn't he have any? I mean, he had no choice. They went all in. I mean,
He had the great Brock Purdy on the bench. He could have gone to him.
Well, I think, to me, look, Brock Purdy. I don't think anybody felt the way about Brock Purdy at that point. But now, after all these games, I mean, how do you? Let me ask you this: if Brock Purdy gets to the Super Bowl or gets to the conference championship game, who's the starter on San Francisco next July when we start camp? Who's their starter?
It's Brock Purdy. Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah, Purdy will be the starter.
That's why all these geniuses that love Trey Lance, we're going to find out because they could if Carthon loves Trey Lance and thinks he's a star and he has any decision-making power in Tennessee. I don't know if he does or not. Sometimes you get these GM titles, they have no real power. So we got to understand that. But if he has any influence and if he likes him and if he thinks he's going to be good from watching practice tape, then Tennessee will be highly interested. If Tennessee's not interested, it tells the entire National Football League he's got no chance.
I think this young quarterback market with Trey Lance, and even you can throw Jordan Love into this ring as well. I think that's going to be something that is bubbling. We're talking about all the veteran guys. Brady, of course, is going to get the headlines. Derek Carr, people are talking about him. Where is he going to go? But I think Lance and Jordan Love are the ones that I'm most intrigued by. Lance, my thing on Lance, Michael, is that I I'm not as sure as my evaluation of Trey Lance. Did he look rough? Of course he did. He looked horrible in those games earlier this year. But also, we've seen quarterbacks look bad, but then also progress as well. And Lance, I'm willing to give him at least a slight benefit of the doubt just because he hasn't played consistently for going on now 3.5 years. Maybe when he actually gets those reps.
There's no coach in football who makes the quarterback position easier for the quarterback than Kyle Shanahan. There's no coach.
Agreed.
Okay?
Yeah.
And Lance couldn't operate in that. He was trying to make it easy for him, and he couldn't operate. And so, like, okay, maybe he needs more time. We'll give him more time.
Yeah.
I have my doubts. I have my doubt. There's no coach that makes from Matt Schaub to any quarterback that played there, Hoyer, Garoppolo, all those guys, it's the game's easier. Now, what happens to them when they get behind, if they get behind against Dallas, say they're down 14-0 in the third quarter or something happens, they have to come back where the quarterback can't rely on these plays that are schemed so perfectly and called so perfectly. Guys are so wide open, right? When it's, I got to throw it, and I got to throw it, and you got to throw it from a drop back game, not from a play action game. Well, then Purdy would show up as the 7th rounder, but he doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah, it's one of the best front-running offenses, and I don't say that as like a disrespect, because when they get it rolling and they can play from in front and they can dictate the terms, it's as good an offense you'll see in the NFL.
It's as good, and he's the best play caller in the league because he called like that call he made on the sideline down there, and Purdy threw a horrible ball. Yeah. Purdy threw it too close to the safety. It almost got picked off. I mean, the kid made the play on it, but it could have been picked off. So, the guy knows how to call the right play at the right time, and he knows how to set up his offense, and he knows how to attack the adjustments within the defense, all the things that great play callers could do.
I just don't want you to close the book on Trey Lance. All right.
Oh, you can keep reading it. Go ahead.
To choose your own adventure.
You're like the kid. You know who you're like with Trey Lance. You're like the kid who found Playboy for the first time, and he can't fuck, and he's got to keep looking at it. Like he's got to keep looking at it.
It's a choose your own adventure book. We're going to take another break. I like that. That's a good one. We're going to take another break here. We'll discuss, watch the tape on the other side. The Philadelphia Eagles, we're putting them under the microscope here on the GM Shuffle. All right, let's continue our watch the tape segment here, Michael, as we head into the divisional round weekend. The number 1 seeds, Kansas City and Philadelphia, coming off of the bye. But let's focus in on the Eagles because they were 14-3 this season. So much talent across the board, offense and defense. But I want to talk about this defense, specifically their secondary, because the narrative about this Eagles team is that they're a Super Bowl caliber defense. They're ready to rock, no holes whatsoever. But what's the truth when you actually put on the film?
Well, they have vulnerability in the secondary. There's no denying it. They're for all the conversation that they're this lockdown man-to-man. See, this starts with most of the time that people think every coverage is man-to-man. It really starts with that. And the Eagles are not a very good man-to-man team. They're just not. Now, when they have Gardner Johnson in there, it gives them a safety that can cover. And when Maddox plays, they have a better nickelback, but he's hurt. But they're not a good man-to-man team. And when they have to play, and they don't play a lot of man-to-man, they want to play zone. They want to play cover 2. They want to play, some mixed coverages. Mm-hmm. And so you don't really get a chance to see that, right? So when they go into Dallas against a good quarterback, Dallas throws the ball fairly well against them for 304 yards, right? When they play against Detroit in the opening game, Detroit wasn't Detroit that we know. The thing with Philly is when you look at their numbers statistically, you say, oh, they're good defensively. They're the 5th best team in getting interceptions. They're the 10th best team they're the 1st best team defensively in passing yards allowed. Well, what quarterbacks have they faced? Rodgers in week 12, they weren't playing very well. Rodgers threw for 236. They had 2 picks. Tell me another quarterback you want me to talk about. Goff at the beginning of the season, they scored 35 on him. I'm not sure they were ready to go. And then, Prescott at the end of the year. They haven't really had to play against the elite quarterback. And this week against Daniel Jones, he's not the elite player. Their scheme helps Daniel Jones quite a bit. But, to me, there's a vulnerability. But the problem to get to that secondary is you got to block them. That's why they're the best team in the league in sacks. They can pressure you with 4 guys. What Philly wants to do is pressure with 4, play zone, keep the ball in front of them, don't give up big plays, right? They're fifth. What I say, they're number 1 team in yards allowed in the passing game. So they don't give up big plays. And because of that, they're able to keep the ball in front, and you got to block them because they're like San Francisco. You got to block them on a continual basis, week after every single play, and it's hard to do. But if you can block them, you're going to throw the ball on their secondary. You're going to win one-on-one matchups. Bradbury's can't cover man-to-man. Bradbury can't cover anybody. So you're going to win that one. And Slay, for all this conversation, he's a shutdown corner. Mm-hmm. He might have been at one time. He's a good player. I mean, in the grading system, he's a 62 player. He's not a top 5 corner in the league. He's not going over there saying, you got Justin Jefferson, just shut him down. Like, no, you're going to have to give him – now, could he go shut down the number 2 receiver? Yeah, I think he could probably do that. He'd probably play him well. But this isn't Revis over here now. Let's not confuse it, right?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the Philly secondary, they've had good moments on tape because of what you mentioned about that pass rush. I mean, I'm looking at their numbers. They have 4 guys with double-digit sacks on that defensive line. Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. Like, they have so many guys that can affect the quarterback, and it's made some of those guys on the back end a little bit, I don't want to say overrated, but it's made them look a little bit better than what they are.
I mean, that's the game. That's why when you draft a corner in the top 5 picks of the draft, he better be Rod Woodson. He better be Deion Sanders. Yeah. Because if he's Jeff Okudah, he's just good, not great. Everybody needs the pass rush. Look, when you were a kid playing in Seattle in the backyard, when it was 3 Mississippi, you were probably the best coverage guy out there. You fucking dominated. When it was 3 Mississippi. When it was 5 Mississippi, you probably weren't as good. If it got to 7 Mississippi, you sucked. Right?
Yeah.
Take that principle, that simple backyard football principle, and apply it. That's the Eagles. If the Eagles play against a team that makes them count to 5 Mississippi, you'll throw the ball on them. But if they only got to count to 3 Mississippi, they're going to kick your ass. That's it. That's what it is. And everybody wants to they want to blitz more. If the Eagles blitz more and play zero coverage, it's easier for the quarterback because he knows I'm going to look for Bradbury's guy, I'm going after him. Right? Or I'm going to look for, when Maddox isn't on the field, I'm going after the nickel guy. Boom, I'm going to make a throw. Like, if they played Cincinnati would have to block them, but Cincinnati would destroy them in the secondary. They couldn't cover any of Cincinnati's receivers. The problem is, this is why football is a game of the trenches, because if you can protect, if you make the defense count to 5 Mississippi, you're going to win. You're going to throw the ball against anybody.
Do you think that their defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, who's been up for head coaching jobs for now 2 years in a row, do you think that he's maximizing the personnel that they have there on that defense?
I think he's hiding it. I mean, I think what he's trying to, he is. He's got, he's got 69 sacks. Mm-hmm. Right? So he's letting those guys rush. And think about it now. He has 69 sacks. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Riddick's got 16. Sweat's got 11. That's 27. Okay? Hargrave's got another 11. That's 38. All right? And Graham's got another 11. That's 49. And Fletcher Cox has got 7. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's 56. Milton Williams has got 4. That's 60. 60 of the 69 come from the down guys. They don't come from the linebackers. They don't come from the corners. They don't come from anybody but those guys that rush all the time. So rush them. Look, rush them. Rush them. And make the offense have to block them. And then when you want to be creative, rush 5 so that the offensive line has to block one-on-one. When you have a dominant defensive line, rush 5. When you have a bad offensive line, rush 3, rush 7. Don't ever just rush 4, because when you just rush 4 with a shitty defensive line, they can block you, and you're counting the 7 Mississippi.
Do you think that there's teams in the NFC that are still alive that can make the Eagles play in 5 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi. Like, can Dallas and San Francisco do those?
Like Philly can. San Francisco could, because San Francisco is going to figure out how to run the ball. Look, this weekend, I mean, if you go back and watch the game, the Giants could run the ball on them. Now, where the Giants, they got behind, they couldn't, they got in the 3rd and long, they couldn't protect, and it's 21-0. They turned it over. It's 21-0 before you could sit down. They got the block punt. They made it 21-7. They kind of, it's 24-7. And then the offense then took over, because when the offense gets that lead, that makes you as an offense have to throw it all the time. And that's when the Eagles defense shines. But if you stay close to them and in balance, and you could run the football where you have a little bit of a success running the ball, right? Mm-hmm. And you can run it on them. I mean, they give up 4.6 yards a carry. You can run the football on them. The problem is you can't run it on them when you get behind.
I think it's one of those things with Philadelphia where it's not easy, but it's simple. Every team goes in knowing what they have to do, but it's easier said than done, because it's, hey, block the front four, exploit the secondary. Well, that front four is pretty damn good. The guys that they have in that front four, and you just mentioned it, 60 sacks from those down defensive linemen there. It's one of the best, probably the best defensive line in football. It's one of the reasons why we like that team dating all the way back to May. And the folks that want to go ahead and listen, you check the receipts. We talked about the Eagles.
I mean, Jeffrey Lurie, when he bought the team, and Joe Banner came in with them, and those guys, their whole philosophy was set around offensive and defensive line. We're going to be strong in the lines, and that hasn't changed since he's owned the team.
Yeah, it's a fantastic philosophy. Game 1 lost in the trenches, despite what people will tell you. Let's take our final break, Michael. On the other side, we'll get to my favorite weekend in football, the divisional round, here on the GM Shuffle. All right, it's the moment of truth. Now it's our game previews for this weekend in the divisional round. And we got 4 awesome games, I think. I thought it was probably the best combination of games that we could have gotten from Super Wildcard Weekend. Let's start Saturday afternoon. Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs coming off of the bye. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they've been stellar at home in the playoffs other than last year's AFC Championship game. Kansas City, though, at our show sponsor DraftKings, laying 8.5. Total is at 53, the highest total of the week, and a lot of points expected at Arrowhead.
And it's funny, when you go back and watch the last game, and I studied the last game this week, and it was an interesting game to study, because Jacksonville tried to play it the right way. They just they couldn't get it done. I mean, they just couldn't execute well enough offensively, particularly on 3rd down. But they had the right idea, right? They came into the game, they went onside kick, got it.
Yep.
Gained a possession right from the start, right? But they got 1 first down and they had a punt, and then they got behind and they got back in the game, but then they missed a field goal. So instead of going into halftime 20-10. It could have been 20-10, but instead it was 20-7. No, it was 20-10 at the half, but it should have been 20-13 at the half. Buckner missed an extra point in the game, and then they missed 2 field goals, and they just did. And even though the Chiefs turned it over 3 times, Chiefs turned it over once in the red zone, but the Chiefs were dynamic in the red zone. 4 out of 5 times they scored. The one time they turned it over. So this, to me, the score of that game, Femi, I think is a little misleading. I really think it's misleading in the sense that I think this line is tilted a little bit too heavy in that area, because I think that was a closer game than we all think it was. I really do. I think it was a closer game than we think, because they played them, they were going into a bye week the next week. They had a bye after the game. And so, and you looked at it and you say, okay, here we are, we got a chance. And they had the right idea. They just didn't execute the right idea. And that's what happens to you. So, and they held the Chiefs scoreless in the 4th quarter. They rallied back. They scored late. But to me, they've got to be better on 3rd down. They've got to do a better job in the red zone. And they've got to be able to, you could say, well, they got to control the football. They controlled it 32 minutes in the last game. They can't have missed opportunities. Mm-hmm. And in the game, Lawrence wasn't as sharp. He's going to need to play it on an elite level. If Lawrence plays at an elite level, this line he'll cover. If he doesn't, then I think you're in jeopardy of it.
Doesn't it concern you a little, though, with this Jacksonville defense? I mean, they gave up 7.8 yards per play in the last outing, 486 yards. Mahomes was 26 of 35, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he was 331 yards through the air. Now, I know Kansas City was hyper efficient on third down, 7 of 10. I don't think that's reputable, but I just get concerned of, can Kansas City on offense be able to name their score and pretty much go down the field at will against this Jags defense?
I mean, when the game was close, Valdez-Scantling made a play like you couldn't believe. Like you couldn't believe in the game. I mean, it was like unbelievable. It was a 36-yard catch right by the Chiefs sideline. It was unbelievable. And a lot of things that happened in this game, I think, were reflective on the Jaguars got called for illegal men downfield, pass interference on offense. They're trying to run their outside bubble stuff to get away from the inside pressure from Spagnuolo. And they got called for a guy downfield, or they got called for it blocking, and it kind of was nitpicking calls. It really was bullshit, and it kind of took them out of their rhythm. I think if they don't get those calls, I think they got a chance. This was the Toney coming out party game, right?
Yep.
Kadarius Toney was really the difference in the game. He had a 32-yard run in the game. He had 4 catches and a touchdown, and it was Pacheco's running. The power and the angry way that he runs was the difference. So do I think they got to play better? There's no doubt. They got to stop them. They got to get some tip balls. They got to get, but they got 3 turnovers and they still couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They played the right way. Sometimes you play the right way and lose. And so, but the right way to play. See, that to me is the most encouraging thing going in there. They know the right way to play. They just didn't execute it.
Who do you think wins the game?
Oh, I think Kansas City wins it, but I think 8.5 is a lot of points. I think this line's inflated. I mean, on my power rankings, I have as a 4.47 game.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, look, do I think now if they get behind like they did in this game, I think it'll be hard. But here's where I think you got to. Kansas City's in the top 12 in those 19 categories I talk about all the time. They're in the top 12 and 14. Jacksonville's in the top 12 and 10 of them. So there's Jacksonville's, this is going to come down to, what do I always say about playoff games? Your best players must play their best.
Mm-hmm.
This game, Lawrence has to be deadly accurate, like he was when they played in Tennessee. He's got to play great. And ATN's got to play great. And so does Kirk. All their best players have to play their elite level. And that still might not be good enough.
They're going into a buzzsaw.
But I think it's a closer game.
Yeah, they're definitely going into a buzzsaw Arrowhead.
Hey, they're a better team. Let me say this to you. They're a better team than Cincinnati was last year that went in there.
Wow.
They're a better team.
Wow. And it might sound crazy to a lot of people listening to that, but if you follow the betting markets, there have been a lot of respected, sharp bettors who have loved Jacksonville from week 1. They were all in on this Jaguars team, and they kind of let them down.
They have a lot of talent.
Yeah,
they have a lot of talent. Now, look, I mean, Andy Reid first of all, when does Kansas City? They rarely cover, but the reason I think they're a better team because they have a better offensive line.
Yep.
I think they could rush. Cincinnati could rush. The difference is I don't trust Patterson, where last year McPherson was deadly.
Yeah.
Right, Patterson. I don't trust him to make kicks, especially clutch kicks. So. But in terms of their overall talent level, they don't have Chase, but they've got good receivers, and they've got good running backs, and they can run better than Cincinnati could run the ball.
And they have a better head coach, too. Doug Peterson, he's won a Super Bowl.
Well, I think the one liability, Lou Anarumo is better than Mike Caldwell at this point. Now, Mike Caldwell will grow up from this game the last time they played him, but I do think that gave Cincinnati advantage. There's no doubt.
I do like the confidence though that Doug Peterson gives this Jaguars team. Like, it feels like those guys, they believe in what Doug is selling them, and Doug has won a Super Bowl, and he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles at quarterback, so he has to be doing something pretty good there in Jacksonville. So I think
last time they played Femi, it was a 9-point. They were a 9-point favorite.
Oh, Jags are definitely improved since then, but Kansas City
and the over/under was 51. The over/under was 51.
I hope we get some points in that game. That's going to be a fun one Saturday afternoon. I like Kansas City to win that game as well, but I'm picking up what you're putting down on this being a little bit more competitive than people think it will be. Saturday night, over at the Link in Philly, a good old-fashioned NFC East rivalry renewed. Giants taking on the Eagles. Eagles 7.5-point favorites, total sitting at 48. Looks like they're all clear on the injury front with Jalen Hurts. He practiced in full on Wednesday. He should be good to go. Lane Johnson practiced as well. He should be good to go. Avonte Maddox is the one guy who might miss this game, but Philly pretty much all systems go here as they're coming off of the bye.
Well, I mean, they're going to play. They're going to try to play, right? I mean, can Lane Johnson play? The guy needs surgery. I mean, he's a tough kid. Can he go through the game? I mean, that remains to be seen. Can Hurts get through the game? Now, the good thing is, it's going to be really warm. It's going to be almost 50 degrees here in Philly.
Nice.
So you don't have to worry about that hard concrete turf where Hurts hits his shoulder. Look, the last time they played in the Meadowlands when the Giants got blown out, the Giants gave up too many big plays, too many explosive plays, and they couldn't get into any sustained rhythm offensively. And they got behind in the game, and the Giants can't get behind in the game. They have to stay attached. They have to be able to stay attached, and they got to run the ball. I mean, they ran the ball on Philly the last time, but they get behind, and it's hard to keep running and keep calling runs. And I think it'll be a hard game for the Giants. I think they're better than they were because they're healthier than they were the last time. But I think it's going to be a hard game. I think the longer the game goes, Philly could come out, Kansas City and Philly, because coming off the bye, they could come out with a little bit of rust. And if that happens, you got to take advantage of it and stay attached, because both these teams, Kansas City and Philly, when they're playing from in front, man, they're hard to play.
Yeah, especially Philly with that run game, and if they have everything rolling, that is a tough wagon to stop. How do you think Wink Martindale kind of plays this? Do you think that he goes back to the blitz heavy route, or do you think that he kind of tries to play this off?
No, I think he's going to attack. I mean, he had some blitzes that got home free against him the last time. The problem was he couldn't hold up in the back end. So I think he's got to stop. He's got to stop the run outside in. Hurts hurt him last time in the run game, had a touchdown, and make big throws with his arm. I think he's got to take away the big play. I think he's got to pick his spots on when he needs to attack the quarterback. And he's got to be able to do a good job of when he does that. And he can't give up the tight end screen. You can't give up the cheap yards. You got to make them earn it. But you can't let the ball get thrown over your head, and you got to be able to tackle the talent. You got to tackle A.J. Brown, and you got to make a play. I mean, they get beat on a touchdown. Remember, they run that pick play, and the kid, and it looks like it's going to get picked off over on the sideline, and, the kid doesn't make a play on it. Waddle scores a touchdown. They had opportunities. They need to make plays. It's going to be a hard game for them, but the longer the game goes that they stay attached, the confidence in the Giants will shine, and the Eagles will get more nervous, especially that stadium will get very, very, very worried
fast.
And that's the only real chance. And then they got to have the ball last and win it then.
Yeah. Let the Eagles start the game with 2 straight 3-and-outs and see what that sounds like Saturday night at Lincoln Financial Field. Those Eagle fans don't give a damn about no 14 wins. It's what have you done for me lately? I laid the 7 with Philadelphia at open. I think the Eagles are just the better team. I think that talent really, especially in the second half, will shine through with Philadelphia. And I think that Hurts is healthier. He should be good to go. Lane Johnson, he's going to have to fight through it, but he's as tough as anybody, as you'll see in the NFL. I think he'll be able to make it through the game there.
If you go back and watch the game, Femi, and you should watch it. I mean, the Giants front gave him some trouble. The Giants front they gave him some trouble. Even when Lane was healthy, they gave him some trouble, and they weren't 100% there at the Giants. I mean, this is not going to be pushover page here.
No, I don't think
they're going to, they're going to give him some trouble, and if he's not 100%, it's going to be hard. And look, I think the Eagles win. I think 7.5. I have it at 7.31 games, so for me, it's almost a push.
But do you think that the Giants can block Philly's front four? We talked a lot about Philly's defense.
No, I think that's the problem.
That's
Thomas struggled against Sweat. But I think what you're going to see out of the Giants, I think you're going to see the same thing we saw last week. I think you're going to see a little bit of the Eagles are going to get a little bit of their own medicine. I think the Giants are going to run that six-back offense. I think you're going to see Daniel Jones start to run more because, what are we saving him for? This is it. We're going to need him in there.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a little bit of Daniel Jones on the ground. He had 70-something yards against the Vikings. But that Vikings defense is a significant drop-off from what we'll see from
anybody who sits there and wants to pay Daniel Jones $45 million after that Viking game, at some point, let's just slow down. Tell me one throw that the scheme didn't really give him a great opportunity. I think he played really well. Don't get me wrong. And I think the Giants should re-sign him. A lot of it's going to be what the contract is for me. But that being said, and the reason I say that for me is because he can't eat all, like in Tony Soprano, you can't eat all the macaroni. Like you got to share, like he got to share it, right? And so, I think that's it, because some of those throws that they came from Kafka, they came from Dayball. They didn't come from him making a play. Where when you watch Patrick Mahomes, sometimes they come from Mahomes.
Yeah. I think it's a line that you always say, Daniel Jones, you're not it, you're part of it. So let's not get it confused here with what he did. But hey, tip our hat to him. He played well last Sunday. Cincinnati, we'll get over to Sunday. This will be Sunday noon West Coast time, 3:00 Eastern. Cincinnati's taking on the Buffalo Bills in Western New York at our show sponsor DraftKings. The Bills 5-point favorites, total at 48.5. This is the rematch of the game that we saw Monday Night Football. Yeah, there's 5.5. There's even 6. There's a 6 at the South Point. Chris Andrews and Vinny Magliulo, those guys have a 6 in that market. Obviously, the last time we saw these two teams play, Damar Hamlin, who's made great strides. He's been in the building with the Buffalo Bills daily is what has been reported, which is awesome news from what we saw January 2nd when he went into cardiac arrest there. But now the game will be played in Buffalo between these two teams. Both teams, Michael, I think kind of limping into the divisional round after what we saw Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, if Buffalo doesn't go back to their six-back offense, I think they have a really good chance to lose. And I don't think Cincinnati's the same team as they were last year. The kicker's not as hot. The offensive line is actually worse than it was last year, if that's even possible. But, Ted Karras is really the only guy survived from all the changes they made. I mean, Williams, how is Williams going to play with a bad knee?
He's not.
He's got a dislocated kneecap. I know he's listed as doubtful, but I mean, how would he even play, or could he move?
No, we can report that now. He's not playing.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if he does, it's probably a blessing for Buffalo. Buffalo hasn't been able to rush the passer like they need to. Cincinnati will move the ball. What do we have? What are we on the over under here? What are we? 48.
Yeah, 48.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think both teams can move the ball. I don't think Buffalo isn't as skilled as people think they are. Like, they miss McKenzie. Think about this, Femi. From being in the league, when you're signing Cole Beasley and you're bringing back John Brown, that's not because you think they still have a lot left in the tank. That's because you're desperate. You're not courageous. You're desperate. And so when you're doing that, you're telling everybody we're really unhappy with our receivers other than Diggs. Now, what people forget about, when Diggs played in the Kansas City game, I think he had 3 catches for 7 yards in Kansas City in the high-scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel Davis had 200 yards, and that was the offense. It was Allen running and Gabriel Davis making explosive plays. If Allen doesn't run and you take away Gabriel Davis and you limit some of this other, Diggs from playing, you can't do what Boyer did in the game last week. Oh, Xavier Howard, you got him even though you can't cover him. You can't do that. You can't be that stupid.
This is the hardest game for me, I think, honestly, from a betting standpoint. I have not bet the game. I'm probably not going to bet the game because it's those two units that I think are going to really be under the microscope. That Cincinnati offensive line, which is very banged up, and then that Buffalo pass rush that is non-existent. I mean, Miami's offensive line was banged up last Sunday, and they didn't take advantage of it. Yeah, they didn't
block them for the most part.
Exactly. So everyone's making this whole thing about, no Lyle Collins, no Alex Kappa, no Jonah Williams. Well, is Buffalo going to take advantage of that? We haven't seen that to be true, and there's a reason why they went out and got Von Miller in the offseason was for games like this. Now that you don't have him, I don't know if they can get pressure. And if you try to dial up the blitz against Joe Burrow, good luck. Good luck with that.
I mean, he's going to throw it. They can't. They cannot cover. Let me just say this. I don't give a shit if they have Tre'Davious White. I don't care who they can't cover any of these 3 receivers with any of their corners. They just can't. They're going to be open. Can he get him the football? Is it a 5 Mississippi game or a 3 Mississippi game? That's what it's going to come down to. I have it as a 2.36 game. The line's 5.5. You get some 6. Look, if Buffalo comes out and they decide that Josh Allen is going to be he's got to carry the team and we're going to run him and we're going to play, do a little bit of that. Okay, I got it. But if he turns it over and he's not the main guy running, they're vulnerable.
That's what I think as well. I think Buffalo wins a close game, but it feels like a field goal game either way. 6, now that it's at the South Point, I'm going to have to take a long, hard look at Cincinnati. I don't want to bet this game, but if it's 6.5, I think Bengals is the side for me. But Buffalo, I think, will go ahead and advance. Final game of the weekend, 3:30 West Coast time, 6:30 East Coast time. This is the game that I'll be glued to Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, with your pom-poms. Assuming you get away from the Playboy magazine that you're looking at with Trey Lance, assuming you could steer yourself away from that.
We'll save that for the offseason.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers that our show sponsor DraftKings. Niners 3.5-point favorites, but there's some fours out there in the market as well. Total sitting at 46. Mike, what do you make of this matchup?
well, look, I think that, it's all going to come down to, can Dallas not make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
And a mistake is if they let Maher try to field goal at 34 yards and he misses it, that's a turnover. That's a mistake. So you got to be careful there.
Yeah.
And, Dallas has got to stop the run. They've got to put some pressure on Purdy. And they've got to force San Francisco to kind of play a little bit from behind. Force them to get into a play-action pass game. Hard to do. A drop-back pass game. Hard to do.
Yep.
I think it's a really close game. I have it as a 1.13 game. I think Dallas can upset them. I really do. I know Stephen A's thinks he's got his cowboy hat already, but look, Dallas is the dog, is in the nobody expects much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got to be able to put 5 or 6 plays together. You're not going to get one play for 30 yards. You're going to get 5 yards. I mean, Seattle moved the football on them last year in the first half. They moved it in the second half. It's 24-17. They're driving back down the field, right?
Yep.
They're driving back down the field. They fumble. Now it's 31-17. They don't hold serve. But say Seattle would have held them or got a turnover there and made it 24-24.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a different game. Seattle moved the football on them. Seattle moved it on them. And if they play man-to-man, which I don't think the 49ers want to do, like they tried to do against Metcalf, these receivers will win on the outside. So, if you take Dallas, you're putting a lot of faith in my man here in the basement in Des Moines and in Kellen Moore, which I don't always have a lot of. But there's a way for Dallas to win this game. There is a way for Dallas to win this game.
Yeah.
And it really is. It stems from what the Raiders tried to do, what Seattle tried to do. It's those areas. And if they can do that, they got a chance. Now, last time they played, San Francisco got in the playoff game 10-0, and Dallas's offensive line couldn't block them.
Yep. Yeah. The Niners controlled the line of scrimmage in that last game. They bullied them. I still have nightmares of Connor Williams getting ragdolled all up and down Jerry World that game last year. But I took the points with Dallas. I took the +4.
Of course you did.
Because and it's not just because I'm a homer and anything like that. Like I've bet against the Cowboys before. Like that's fine and dandy for me. It's my money is money. But I really do think that Dallas has a Super Bowl caliber ceiling. Now, over the past month or so, we didn't see that, and that's why a lot of people thought that Tampa Bay was live to upset them. I bet Dallas against Tampa Bay. I laid the 2.5, and I sat back and watched an easy winner in that game. So it's not that I think that Dallas is just this undervalued team, but I do think that a lot of people still have 4 to 5 weeks of bad tape that the Cowboys put out there in their minds. But if you speak to any of the odds makers out here in Las Vegas, at one point this regular season, and like around that November time, Dallas was the number 1 rated team in the NFC. They said that I have the Cowboys rated over the Eagles, over the Niners, over all these teams. So they do have that ceiling. And I think these two teams are just evenly matched. They're a little bit closer than people think. So the 4, in my opinion, was valuable, getting it over a field goal. I think the Niners could win this by 3. I think Dallas could pull the upset, like you mentioned as well. But one thing that will drive me crazy on Sunday is if we see the Cowboys go to this spread Big 12 offense and they're letting Nick Bosa go one-on-one with Tyler Smith, the rookie, or they're letting him go one-on-one with Tyron Smith on the right side, that's where the Cowboys could lose this game. You got to, we've talked about playing the Cooper Rush offense, under center, using the tight ends. I think that's how Dallas can win. They keep this thing close to the vest, make timely plays, get ahead of the Niners, make Purdy come back from behind, let Micah Parsons go after him. I think Dallas can pull off the upset. And I'm going to pick it, Michael. I'm going to say the Cowboys win the game. And we'll get Cowboys-Eagles NFC title game. There
you go. You'll get your Playmate of the Year right there. The thing I think nobody's talking about. I mean, first of all, Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn. Yep. I mean, they practiced against each. I mean, if Dan Quinn doesn't know how Kyle thinks, then he hasn't paid attention. I'm sure he has. Mm-hmm. So that's going to go, and how they utilize their skill set. And what they do. They'll have a harder time blocking Dallas than people think they will, because if Dallas can play with some power, if you can play with a little bit of power. And they can match up. Now, you got to tackle the talent. That's the problem.
Yes.
You got to tackle the talent. I mean, as much as we talk about Purdy, when he gets the ball to Samuel, or he gets the ball to McCaffrey, or he gets the ball to Ayuk or Kittle, it's one thing that they get the ball. It's another thing that they gain more yards after they get it. You got to tackle the talent. That's going to be the key number on Monday morning, is how many yards after the catch. to the Cowboys limit in this game. That's the number one thing that Dan Quinn's got to preach. They're going to make their plays. We got to tackle them when they get their plays.
And best believe Kyle Shanahan saw that tape of Trayvon Diggs missing tackles Monday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're going to scheme this thing for Diggs to have to tackle. And that scares me a little bit there. But if they can make their tackles and limit those big plays, I think Dallas has more than a puncher's chance to pull off the upset. All right, that does it for us this week on the podcast. Thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to VSiN. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, on the ones and twos, as always. And, Michael, thank you to you, buddy.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah,
we'll talk next week. We'll get your book back out. We'll see. We'll get what's going on. We'll get that Trey Lance book out. We'll peel you away from it.
We're not closing the book just yet. There's some chapters.
No, God knows we're not.
Some chapters that are left to be written. I'll see you Monday. Right. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.